20% was the gold standard, but it was not uncommon to make anywhere from 30 to 50% cash on cash return. I did it many times. Well, unfortunately, those days are over. What cash on cash return should someone expect when investing in an Airbnb in 2025? It's a question I recently got from a guy named Blake on Instagram. He said, would you accept anything below a 15% cash on cash return? Or is that your bare minimum when analyzing properties? So I want to talk about this today. I think it's a very topical question, really a question that I've gotten many times over the years, but it's coming up a lot in 2025. And I think it's coming up a lot because people are analyzing deals and the numbers just aren't looking that great relative to where we were a few years ago. So today's video, I want to talk about where we were, where we started, when really Airbnb was kind of this new machine for a lot of people. And I want to set expectations on what you can make in 2025 and my philosophy behind it. So before we get into it, let's define what a cash on cash return is. A cash on cash return is a metric that basically measures how hard your money is working for you in a year's time. It's usually defined by the amount of profit that you make, meaning after all expenses, divided by the money that you invested in that investment. So let's say you invest $100,000 and let's say you make a profit of $10,000. You would divide the profit, $10,000, by the total invested, $100,000, and that would give you a 10% cash on cash return. Now, back in 2017 to 2021, 2022, the gold standard for Airbnb was making a 20% cash on cash return. So if you invested $100,000, a 20% cash on cash return would be $20,000. And this was really, I think, achievable. You could pretty much throw a dart anywhere in the US, and as long as it was a pretty good deal, you could make a 20% cash on cash return. Well, unfortunately, those days are over. And I will say, like, 20% was the gold standard. Like, that was like, hey, you could pretty much make this, but it was not uncommon to make anywhere from 30 to 50% cash on cash return. I did it many times. Many people that I know did it many times. It was possible to make even more than that. But here's the harsh reality. Back then, interest rates were anywhere from 2.75% to 3.5%. So to leverage money from the bank, and it was just so cheap. It was so cheap to borrow money. Back then, there were just so many more options available. You could get into short-term rentals anywhere from 10 to 20% down, so long as you met certain guidelines and parameters with your lender. Again, those days are pretty much over. I think these days to get into a short-term rental, you can pretty much expect to put anywhere from 20 to 25% down, maybe 15% if you're lucky. I think the 10% loans, I don't really think that those are that easy to find anymore, and the parameters are more difficult. I think in general, lending is tightening up these days. So I'd pretty much go in with the mindset that you're probably gonna put 20% down on an investment property in 2025. So when you factor in the fact that, you are now basically having to put 20% down, so on a $500,000 investment property, that's $100K, and interest rates are now 6.5% to 7.5%, double or more than double. Your mortgage now is thousands of dollars more every single month. So not only did you put more money into it to just get it up and running, but your profit is significantly less because of interest. So this is eating into returns really quite a bit. And also, back then, the design standards weren't really all that high. You could get into a short-term rental for $10 a square foot to furnish it, get it all decorated and everything. On a 1,500 square foot home, you're looking at $15,000. And yeah, I mean, you could get away with it back then because competition wasn't all that high. But these days, you got to invest a lot more than $10 a square foot to get a pretty decent Airbnb up and running. In many cases, more than $20 a square foot. So it's just expensive. You have to spend way more on amenities, on design, on a down payment, and on interest. And so with all that factored in, that golden 20%, gold standard that I talked about, is very difficult to just find out in the open. So I would say the new gold standard today is probably 10%. A lot of people say, well, 10%. I'm like, well, why wouldn't I just invest in stocks, Rob? Or why wouldn't I just, get a long-term rental? Well, there's a couple things that I want to clear up with that mindset. Well, first of all, with stocks, they're going to go up in value, but you're not getting the exact same benefits that you get as owning real estate. So that's one thing. And then a lot of people that say, well, long-term rentals, why wouldn't I just do that? It's way easier. I don't have to manage as much. Well, I'll tell you what, if it is so much more expensive to get into short-term rentals today, it is also much more expensive to get into long-term rentals today. And I would say that it was very possible to get a 10% cash-on-cash return back in the day as well. But now I would say on a long-term rental, the 10% cash-on-cash days, few and far between. I think that's a lot harder. I think you'd be lucky to make 5% cash-on-cash return on a long-term rental today. But again, it's possible. You just have to really make those deals work. So then I hear a lot of people say, if I'm only gonna make a 10% cash-on-cash return, why don't I just do arbitrage? Well, here's the deal. Rental arbitrage, that's where you rent an apartment, you furnish it, and then you put it on Airbnb. You can actually absolutely make more than a 10-20% cash-on-cash return with arbitrage. It's actually a lot easier because the amount of money that you need to break into an arbitrage unit, anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000. That's a much smaller sum of money than what you would need to buy a property. So to contextualize this, let's say you're buying a $500,000 house, you put down 20%, okay, that's 100K. And then let's say that you furnish it for $20 a square foot, right? 1,500 square feet, that's 30 grand. So it's $130,000 that you need to buy a property and get it up and running on Airbnb. At a minimum, there's closing costs, there's holding costs, you're not gonna get it launched right out the gate. So you're really looking at 140, maybe 150K on a $500,000 house. Whereas on an arbitrage unit, like I said, $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 to break into that. Hey, really fast, wanted to take a quick second to say that if this video has the wheels turning and you're like, okay, this sounds good, I wanna get into the world, I wanna learn more about short-term rentals, consider joining my community, HostCamp, community of over 4,000 students that are all looking to do what you're doing, which is get started, scale, optimize, grow their short-term rental portfolios. I made this a no-brainer for anyone interested in joining HostCamp. You can get started for as little as $1, okay? You can get it started for $1. You can tap into my resources, my network, my courses, my PDFs, everything. And if you don't like it, you can always bail, but most people stick around because the HostCamp community is pretty sweet. So I'll leave a link in the description down below for you to give it a shot. Okay, back to the video. But what most people don't realize is that it is so much easier to make a higher return on a smaller amount of money. So if I told you, hey, here's 10 bucks, figure out how to make $1, 10%, that's pretty easy. You could probably figure that out with a little bit of brainstorming. But as that investment goes up, as you go up to $10,000, it gets harder to make $1,000 on that 10,000, or 100,000. It's much harder to make 10,000 on that 100,000, or $1 million. It's a lot harder to make 100,000 on $1 million. So the more money you invest at scale, the harder it is to keep a higher return profile, which is why when you think about investment bankers and these hedge funds and these billion-dollar REITs, they are banking on making a 3 or 4% return on their money, because when you're talking about moving $1 billion around, it's so hard to make a high return on that, which is why they're always aiming for 3 to 4%, because there's just so much more money at play. So when you're thinking about arbitrage, it is very possible, because I'll tell you, I have 4 arbitrage units at the moment. One of them hit 100% cash on cash return in the first year. It's like break even, perfect. It's like pumping out cash for me. My other ones are probably anywhere from a 50 to 75% cash on cash return. So people hear that and they're like, well, dude, why wouldn't you just do that over and over and over again? Well, that's a fair point, but the thing with arbitrage that most people don't understand is that it's a little one-sided. I make really good cash flow from it, but I'm missing out from the main benefits of owning. When you own a property, you actually get 4 massive benefits that compound your wealth. You get the cash flow, which is what you get with arbitrage, but it ends there on the benefit side. But with owning, you get the tax benefits and deductions. Like if you get a cost segregation report, That right there can save you so much money in taxes, or I guess defer or offset your taxes is a better way to put it. You get appreciation, meaning that the property goes up in value, and you get debt pay down, meaning other people pay your rent, right? Because you're renting it to other people, and every time you make a mortgage payment, the balance goes down. So when the balance goes down and the value goes up, you're building wealth on top of getting the cash flow. So you're getting some pretty crazy wealth building benefits with owning that you don't get with arbitrage. So all to say, yes, you can get a higher ROI with arbitrage, and I'm all for it if that's how you need to get started to build up your cash flow. I just always tell people, start with arbitrage, end with owning. That's my philosophy. But you're deploying a much smaller amount of money. So just keep in mind, you know, the cash on cash return on an arbitrage versus owning a property should not be compared apples to apples, because they are two very different investment vehicles in my opinion. So to wrap it all up, what can you expect in 2025? 10 to 15%. I would split the difference. 12.5% cash on cash return is kind of what I would say, you know, is possible, but you have to work for it. I'm not saying that you can't do 20 to 30 or 40%, but in order to do that, you do have to invest some serious cash into the amenity design, into the interior design. This is what we specialize at Funkit Interiors, okay? This is our company, my interior design company, that is short-term rental focused, and we basically design the hell out of properties to make them stand out against the other 99% of the market. My own personal properties are doing anywhere from a 20 to 40% cash on cash return. Depends on the property. Hey, really fast, I just looked into it. I said 20 to 40%. I was a little wrong. It's 20 to 33%. I mean, it's not that big of a difference. I think you get my point. I just wanted to be as clear and transparent as I could be. Okay, back to the rest of the video. With these kind of design themes in mind, and so the one thing I will say is, yes, I make a much higher cash on cash return with these properties, but I invested so much more money to do it. Like, it's very, very difficult to hit a high cash on cash return without investing serious cash into the interior design. So if you want that 20, 30%, just keep in mind, you're not gonna be spending $10 a square foot on furnishing. You're probably looking at 20, 25, even 30 bucks a square foot. So if you want that high cash on cash return, you gotta fork over the cash. Otherwise, you know, 10 to 15%, that's where we're at in 2025. Hopefully you found this helpful. If you did, and you wanna learn why I'm giving up on short-term rental single family residences, you're gonna wanna check out this video right here where I break it all down. Catch you on the next episode of Robuilt. Bye.